Christian mamas, one of the greatest threats to Satan is a Christian mother raising strong men and women of God. So we persevere through the fiery trials and the attacks from the enemy. We're triumphant and we keep our eyes on Christ. We stick together and support one another. And we understand that we serve a God who loves us, wants the best for us, and has our backs. He allows trials for the sake of sanctification, and he will always win. So if you're over here for a play date right now, I would offer you a cup of coffee or tea and a warm slice of sourdough bread. We'd probably talk in broken conversations while our children play in the background, and we'd swap homemaking tips and recipes. So since you can't be here with me right now, just make yourself comfortable in your own home, relax, get a cup of tea or coffee, and I'm going to share some of my tips with you. In this video, you'll also see that I'm making fire cider. This is something that we take throughout the colder seasons just to ward off any sicknesses or anything like that. And so I will leave the recipe that I use in the description below. And if you hear anything in the background, it's likely my baby making sweet little baby noises. I have him in the wrap as I'm doing this voiceover. So as I said in the intro, Satan is intimidated by a good Christian mother. One who is reading Bible stories to her young children, discipling them, training them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Because of that, there's often trials, and motherhood doesn't always come naturally to us women, and it definitely doesn't come easy. But I'm here to tell you that you were literally made for this, and God has equipped you for such a time as this in your motherhood journey. And the best part, you're being sanctified in the process. Okay, have you heard the term matrescence? This is kind of a new term for me just within the last few years, but matrescence is the physical, emotional, hormonal, and social transition to becoming a mother. The length of time that matrescence lasts depends on the woman, but typically can last anywhere from 3 to 10 years. So at minimum, if your eldest is 3 or under, you're for sure still going through these physical, emotional, hormonal, and social changes. And I'm going to take a wild guess that you can feel it, right? So it takes time to really come into motherhood and to adjust to the monumental change that comes from that. And so I want you to love your calling of motherhood. And because of that, I have gathered some tips on what has helped me along the way. Just some very practical tips and some big picture tips that are just, a few of the things that I've picked up along the way that have helped me to love my role as a mother and homemaker. So let's go through those tips. My first one is to work on projects that you are excited about. There are seasons for this, right? Sometimes I take multiple months off of working on this channel because I just don't have the bandwidth to pour into it. However, it is a passion of mine to help homemakers love their calling. And when I'm able to pour into you guys, I have so much more joy throughout the day. And I really do look forward to these times of rest and creativity when I get to do this. So think about it. What's your passion project? Maybe it's art or writing or cooking, whatever it is, make it for you and something that you truly enjoy. And just because you may not be in a season where you can pour into your passion project right now, that doesn't mean that you won't be able to in a month or honestly even a week. My second tip is to understand that you can still do things that you love with your children. It just might look a little different. So when I first became a mother, I stopped everything that I loved because just being a mother was enough for me in that season. And that's okay. I give myself grace in that time of my life. I was learning something entirely new, how to take care of another life. But as I've matured in motherhood, I've realized that I actually can do the things I love with my children. Not everything, of course, and it definitely won't look the same as doing it alone, but it can actually be a lot more fun with your children. For example, since college, I have been a runner. Love running. It makes me feel so good and free and invigorated. And I stopped running when I became a mother. And so a couple years into motherhood, I was like, you know what? I need to start running again. So I got myself a jogging stroller and I started running with my kids. And at the time, I think I had just had the one. Yeah, I just had the one. And then I got a double jogging stroller when we had our second. And now we have one on a bike. So anyways, the way that looks has developed over the years. But I started running with my kids. My runs, of course, aren't what they used to be, but that's okay. We all get outside in the fresh air, and I get to do something that I love. So think about it. What are some things that you stopped doing when you became a mother? Now think about how you can include your children in those activities, even if it looks a little different than it did before. My third tip is to have things to look forward to throughout your week. Aside from the things that I just mentioned, you can have things to look forward to, such as Bible studies, fellowship with other moms, and any other activity for you and the children to look forward to. For example, we do Bible Study Fellowship, BSF, which has world-class programs for the children as well as adults. I have mentioned this in a previous video. I highly recommend seeing if you have one in your area. This has been so helpful for my own Bible study and helping me to deeply connect to the Word. But also, my 4-year-old is constantly talking about the Bible and Jesus, and some of that comes from me teaching him, but a lot of it comes from BSF actually, which is so cool. So highly recommend that. I also host a play group in the summer. I either do it weekly or monthly, depending on the year and how busy life is in that season. But this is so great to host just a bunch of moms and, sit around our back patio and just talk and let the kids run wild outside. I also try to schedule play dates once a week to connect with other mamas and, just for the kids to play with friends. They look forward to that. And that fills my children's cup and it also fills mine. So it's a total win-win. So think about what you can carve into your week that you and your children can look forward to. I know that not all moms are extroverts. I am the definition of extrovert, and so are my children. And that's maybe not necessarily you, and so that sounds awful to you, but find something that would be a win for you and your children. My fourth tip is to have a mentor and fellow Christian mom friends. So this tip is all about having people who can pour into you and who you can pour into them. So you want to reciprocate that love and compassion and mentorship as well. So these are people in your life who really care about you, invest in you. And if you don't have a solid community of friends and mentors, your best bet, honestly, is to pray about it and ask God for them. My community is an answer to my prayers, and it's a reminder every day of how the Lord loves to bless us. When I first became a mother, it was so lonely. I was just saying in the comments the other day to someone who just had her first baby. Her baby was 7 months old, I think, or 7 weeks old. And she was talking about, it's lonely. And it is. And that totally gets easier. I was never lonelier than when I had my first. And all I had was that little baby to take care of. He was super colicky, so I felt like a prisoner in my own home because he hated the car seat. He hated the stroller. So I didn't even go for walks. It was a really rough time in my life. And if you're in that season, I just want you to know it does get better, because those little babies, they grow up. And I kid you not, even by the time they're like 1.5, 2, they become your little buddies. And it just doesn't feel as lonely. Even if it's just you and the kids all day long and you don't get out to meet with other Christian mamas, it just doesn't feel as lonely. So anyway, I digress. But the next step, once these people are in your life, is to invest in them too. So just like any relationship, you want it to be symbiotic. And sometimes it takes effort to nourish these relationships. So do that. it can be so helpful to have people outside of your children to pour into and to kind of take your mind off of obsessing over your children. And by that, I mean, of course, we want to pour into our children, and that's our family is our top priority. However, it can reach a point where you're obsessing over your children. For example, my first was colicky, and so I was constantly researching and doing all of this, work, and frankly, not trusting in the Lord. And once I found something to kind of distract me from that, everything got better. So, next tip, number 5, is to realize that it's not your job to entertain your children every second of their waking hours. Let them be bored. This is where creativity is born. Don't numb them with television. This is where creativity dies. Give yourself a break and let them entertain themselves for a while. There's a sense of freedom when you realize that you are allowed to get your things done while your children learn to entertain themselves. And you'd be surprised how easily they do that with very few toys to play with. Better yet, let the children run outside while you read your little heart out on a blanket or whatever else you find enjoyable. Let them run wild and get fresh air, rain or shine. All right, my 6th tip is to understand that the seasons of motherhood are both mercifully short and mercilessly short. So let me explain. For example, let's take my last tip where I mentioned you can let the kids run wild outside while you read. I'm currently in a season where I would hear that tip and laugh because it's just not possible right now. But in a couple months, when my baby's easier to nurse on the go and sleep on the go and entertain himself, I'll be back in that season. So the seasons of motherhood are just so short in the grand scheme of life, and that's both a breath of fresh air when you're in a tough season, as well as gut-wrenching when you're looking your sweet little children in the face, realizing that they will never be this young again. They'll never look this little again. They'll never say that word wrong again or have their silly little quirks ever again. This is it. So embrace it all because the seasons of motherhood are so short. My next tip is to take care of yourself. This sounds so basic, but seriously, think about what you used to do to take care of yourself, like physically, before having children. Now think about which of those things you're still doing. If you cut most of them out, how can you incorporate them back into your life? So for example, if I made a quick list just off the top of my head of things that I consistently did before having children to take care of myself, it would be running, working out at a fitness studio, getting regular massage and chiropractic, stretching and foam rolling, waxing, just to name a few off the top of my head. After having my first child, I cut out literally every single one of those things that made me feel good, except for chiropractic, because my dear sweet husband is a chiropractor, so that doesn't count. Since then, I have figured out how to incorporate those things back into my routine, and it doesn't always look the same. I'm not going to a salon and getting my eyebrows waxed or anything like that. I have little waxing kits that I have at home, and so again, it looks different, but it is possible. Okay, that brings me to my next point, which is that your children will be quite all right without you for a period of time. I used to be so grieved to leave my children anywhere or with anyone, including my own family, knowing that what they wanted most was me. And for infants, this is somewhat true, and I do bring my little nurslings with me everywhere I go, especially if I'm going to be gone more than an hour. But by the time they're about 6 months old, I am totally okay leaving my children for a few hours while I go do whatever I need to do. So don't feel guilty about that. Okay, my next tip is to be completely reliant on the Lord. Doing a daily Bible study because you need it, not because it's another thing to check off your to-do list or because you feel like God wants it from you. It's not for Him, it's for you. It's like prayer. He is inviting you to do this. And I'm telling you, when you do make time for this every day, your days will go so much smoother. Okay, here's a very practical tip. Make transitions fun. So toddlers have a tough time with transition. Even if you're transitioning to something that they really enjoy, they still have a tough time with it. So try and make it fun. For example, transition to bath time was a challenge for us for a while until I started implementing the bath time song that prepared them for what was to come, and it made it fun. So every night when it was time to head up to the bath, I would sing the same song, and it was The Ants Go Marching One by One. And they loved it. We would all march upstairs, and it was hilarious because it got to the point where I would just start singing the song, and the children were just conditioned to just start marching upstairs without even being told. And they were tickled pink every time Mama started singing, and they got to chime in and march up the stairs. And my husband always laughs at my little troop marching up to the bath, like I have them brainwashed or something. But they loved it. So how can you make transitions fun? Okay, my next tip is a big one for me. This is what my whole course is based off of, which is that often new moms have dysregulated nervous systems that need to be addressed. My nervous system was in a chronic state of fight flight, and I was always stressed, in pain, and sick until I addressed it. And that is everything that I teach in my course. So if you feel like you're in a constant state of stress, always triggered, always in pain, always sick, this isn't normal. I'm not saying that anything's, wrong with you as a person. I'm just saying that you need some help and you need some support. And I think a lot of new moms are fed this lie by the world that, that's just motherhood. Motherhood just is like that, and this is going to be your life for the next 18 years. And you know what? That's wrong. This is not just motherhood, and it's definitely not something you have to live with. So I recommend checking out my course in the description for more details about how maybe I could help you if you feel led to that. But if not, still address your nervous system. All right, my last tip is to have a long-term vision with short-term actions which support that vision for your family. For example, if your vision for your family is to be strong disciples of Jesus, then you need to take daily action to support that vision, such as, what activities do you do? Which friends do you see? What kind of media do you consume? Etc. So I recommend you and your husband sitting together and writing this out and talking this through. All right, let's open this up to discussion, mamas. What would your tips be? What have you already learned being a new mom, or perhaps you're a seasoned mother? What would you tell another mama if you were sitting having a cup of coffee with her? Leave it in the comments below. Thanks for watching.